She doesn't fall for nice guys. That truth unsettles many men because it sounds unfair. We were taught that kindness alone should be enough. Smile, agree, accommodate, never upset the peace. Yet something in us knows that forced pleasantness is not strength. It is fear wearing a polite mask, and fear is never attractive. What draws a woman is not cruelty. It is not arrogance. It is not indifference. It is gravity. A man rooted in himself. A man who is not negotiating for approval with every word he speaks. A man who can stand in discomfort without collapsing into apology or resentment. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That strength is the foundation. We do not wake up seeking to control others. We wake up to master ourselves. Before the world begins to test us, before messages are left unread and expectations go unmet, we anchor our thoughts. Because the battle is never with her, it is within. And if we cannot govern the inner court of our own mind, how could we ever expect to lead anything else? There are 7 disciplines that shape the kind of man she falls for. Not tricks, not tactics, but internal laws. We do not practice them to win affection. We practice them because they are the only way to live with dignity. Paradoxically, that is precisely why they work. 1. Emotional sovereignty. We begin with the first command: govern the inner world. Most men lose attraction the moment they lose emotional control. A delayed reply becomes a storm. A minor disagreement becomes a wound to the ego. But Epictetus warned us long ago, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. If our reactions are impulsive, we are slaves. Emotional sovereignty does not mean suppression. It means observation. We watch jealousy arise without letting it dictate action. We feel insecurity without bowing to it. We allow anger to pass through us like weather over stone. A man who reacts to every emotional tremor becomes predictable. And predictability born of weakness is never compelling. When she tests us, intentionally or not, she is not seeking submission. She is measuring stability. Can we remain centered when she is distant? Can we remain composed when she is emotional? The calm man communicates safety, not because he controls her mood, but because he controls his own. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." How much attraction dies in the theater of a man's imagination? Assumptions, catastrophizing, overanalysis. We discipline our thoughts because fantasy-based suffering erodes our presence, and presence is power. Each morning before the world speaks to us, we remind ourselves, no one else owns our nervous system, no one else decides our worth. When we stop outsourcing our emotional state, we become steady. And steadiness is magnetic. 2. Purpose. Above pleasure. The second discipline is devotion to purpose. A man without direction clings to affection as identity. But when our life has a mission, attraction becomes a complement, not a substitute for meaning. Women do not fall for availability. They fall for alignment. Alignment with a man who is going somewhere. When she senses that our day would still move forward with or without her validation, she sees strength. Not because we are detached from her, but because we are anchored to something greater. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being." That is purpose. Duty before indulgence. Discipline before desire. We rise not because we feel like it, but because we have a role to fulfill. If our entire emotional world orbits around her attention, she feels the weight of it. No one wants to be someone else's oxygen. But when we are building, learning, training, creating, when we are forging competence, our energy shifts. We become expansive rather than needy. We do not chase affection. We attract through momentum. Purpose sharpens posture. It changes tone. It restructures priorities. And when she sees that our life is already in motion, she feels invited, not burdened, to walk beside us. 3. Detachment from outcome. The third discipline is the art of letting go. Not apathy, not coldness, but release. The desperate man tries to secure a future before it exists. He seeks guarantees. He negotiates reassurance. But attachment to outcome breeds anxiety. Epictetus taught that some things are within our control and some are not. Her feelings are not, her decisions are not, her timeline is not. What belongs to us is our conduct, our words, our values. When we confuse control with influence, we suffer. Detachment is paradoxical. The less we cling, the more relaxed we become. The more relaxed we become, the more natural we appear. Attraction thrives in space. When we allow room for uncertainty, we stop performing. Seneca wrote about rehearsing loss, not to become pessimistic, but to become unafraid. If we can imagine life continuing with strength, even if she leaves, we no longer grasp at her presence. We appreciate without clinging. When she senses that we desire her but do not depend on her, tension dissolves. Desire remains, neediness vanishes. And in that space, genuine connection has room to grow. So 4. Boundaries without apology. The fourth discipline is boundary. The nice guy fears disapproval, so he sacrifices his standards. He laughs at what he dislikes. He agrees when he disagrees. He tolerates what erodes him. But silent resentment eventually leaks out as passive aggression. Boundaries are not walls. They are clarity. They communicate self-respect. When we calmly say no, when we state preferences without hostility, we show that we value our time and energy. A man who cannot defend his limits cannot protect a relationship. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself not to be carried along by the impressions of the senses. That includes the impression that approval equals peace. True peace comes from alignment with our principles, not compliance with someone else's comfort. When she encounters a man who does not bend at every gust of emotional wind, she feels contrast, stability, strength, not dominance, integrity. Boundaries signal that our identity is not negotiable. We do not assert ourselves to intimidate. We assert ourselves to remain whole, and wholeness commands respect. 5. Mastery over ego. The fifth discipline is humility without insecurity. Ego demands validation. Ego seeks to win arguments. Ego cannot tolerate being misunderstood. But ego is fragile. It reacts. It postures. It competes unnecessarily. True strength does not rush to defend itself. It listens. It considers. It responds rather than reacts. When criticized, we evaluate rather than explode. When challenged, we remain grounded rather than combative. Seneca warned against anger as a form of temporary madness. How many connections collapse because a man cannot restrain his pride? When we master ego, we create emotional safety. She does not feel she must tiptoe around volatility. Humility is not weakness. It is disciplined self-assurance. We know who we are. Therefore, we do not need to shout it. We do not need to prove it at every turn. In mastering ego, we become difficult to provoke, and a man who cannot be easily provoked becomes difficult to replace. 6. Consistency over performance. The sixth discipline is reliability. Attraction sparked by charm fades quickly if unsupported by character. Grand gestures impress. Consistency builds trust. We show up when we say we will. We speak honestly. We follow through. Not for applause, but because our word means something to us. Integrity is attractive because it reduces chaos. Marcus Aurelius wrote about being the same person in private and in public. That unity creates coherence. When our actions align with our values, we radiate quiet authority. Performance seeks reaction. Consistency builds foundation. And foundation sustains long after excitement fades. She does not fall for theatrics. She falls for a man whose presence feels stable, predictable in virtue, and firm in commitment to his path. 7. Inner peace as power. The final discipline is serenity, not passive surrender, but controlled intensity. We cultivate stillness daily. We examine our thoughts. We refine our conduct. We remind ourselves that external validation is fleeting. When we are at peace within, we do not scramble for attention. We do not compete with other men in insecurity. We do not beg to be chosen. We choose ourselves first, through discipline, growth, and honor. Modern scholars of ancient wisdom often repeat that resilience is built in the ordinary moments, not dramatic crises. Each morning we train our mind. Each interaction becomes practice. She does not fall for nice. She falls for grounded, for centered, for a man whose internal world is ordered. Because chaos cannot lead, so we rise before the world demands anything from us. We reclaim the mind, we pursue purpose, we release outcomes, we defend boundaries, we master ego, we embody consistency, we cultivate peace, not to win her, but to become unshakable. And when we become unshakable, attraction ceases to be something we chase. It becomes something we quietly command.